Hey, I get it. When you're looking at a pair of high-end bookshelf speakers, you're juggling a lot of questions. You don't want to drop a chunk of cash on something that sounds great on paper but ends up gathering dust because it just isn't the right fit for your room, your music taste, or your budget. And that tension, that hesitation, is exactly what I'm trying to cut through today. If you're wondering whether the KEF LS50 Meta in carbon black is worth pulling the trigger for your listening space, stick around. The link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the most common scenario I hear from people who are serious about stepping up from a basic 2-woofer system but aren't ready to go full floor standing. You've probably got a modestly sized living room or a dedicated home theater nook, and you want speakers that can deliver detail without drowning the room in bass that you can't control. The LS50 Meta is marketed as a big sound in a small box, and that promise hinges on two main technologies: KEF's 12th generation Uni-Q Driver and the Metamaterial Absorption technology, or MAT for short. In practice, the Uni-Q Driver places the tweeter right in the center of the woofer, which should theoretically improve the coherence of the mids and highs. The MAT layer, a thin foam-like surface on the back of the driver, is supposed to tame unwanted resonance that often colors the sound in a bookshelf speaker. Now, who will actually feel the benefit? If you're someone who spends a good chunk of your week listening to acoustic guitar, vocal-centric records, or detailed classical pieces, you'll notice the LS50 Meta's ability to keep the upper mid-range clean. In my own tests, a Beethoven piano concerto that usually blurs on entry-level speakers stayed crisp and articulate, allowing the delicate overtones of the piano to shine without muddying the strings. That's a direct result of the 0.07% total harmonic distortion rating and the extended frequency response down to 47 Hz. You're not getting a subwoofer, but you're getting a speaker that can handle the low end of most music without rolling over or sounding boomy. On the flip side, if your listening habits revolve around bass-heavy genres like EDM, hip-hop, or modern pop, you'll probably feel the LS50 Meta's limitations sooner rather than later. The 47 Hz low-frequency limit means you'll miss the sub-bass that drives those tracks, and while you can always add a separate subwoofer, that adds cost and complexity. So for a pure all-in-one solution in a genre-agnostic home theater, the LS50 Meta might leave you reaching for the volume knob a little more often than you'd like. Installation and placement are another practical consideration. KEF's design is sleek. Those carbon black cabinets look almost like a piece of modern furniture rather than a speaker. But there's still a pair of bookshelf units that need ear-level positioning and a solid wall or bookshelf for the best imaging. In a typical 12 by 15 foot living room, I found that placing the speakers about 2 feet apart and angled slightly inward gave a sweet spot that was roughly 6 to 8 feet away, which is ideal for most sofa setups. If you have a smaller apartment with limited wall space, you might end up with less than optimal placement, and the speakers will start to sound like they're fighting each other for space. That's a real trade-off you have to weigh before pulling the plug. Another hidden trade-off is the amplifier requirement. The LS50 Meta is a sensitive speaker, meaning it doesn't demand a massive amp, but it does benefit from a clean, well-damped source. I paired them with a modestly powered integrated amplifier in the 80100 watt range, and the sound was tight, detailed, and free of hiss. If you're currently running a basic receiver that's been doing the job for a decade, you might notice a little coloration or a lack of dynamics until you upgrade the amp. The speaker itself won't force you to spend a fortune, but pairing it with a competent amp is part of getting the performance it promises. Let's talk durability and the everyday experience. The carbon black finish is a matte, fingerprint-resistant surface that holds up well against the occasional coffee ring or dust bunny. The cabinets are still made from MDF, so they're not as robust as a solid wood floor-standing unit, but for a bookshelf size, they feel solid enough to survive the usual handling, moving them from room to room, a brief bump, that sort of thing. In terms of wiring, the speaker terminals are standard binding posts, so you won't need any exotic cables. A decent gauge of 14-gauge speaker wire will do the job without any audible loss. Now, I want to call out a practical weakness that's often glossed over in marketing. The LS50 Meta's acoustic output is decent, but the soundstage, while wide, isn't as deep as you might get from a larger planar magnetic monitor. If you're sitting very close to the speakers, say, a coffee table listening setup, the imaging can feel a bit thin, and the sense of depth may